Hi there and welcome to this video in which I will discuss and explain the concept of producer surplus. Up until now we have only discussed consumer surplus and how it relates to the demand curve. Now let's look at the other side, which is the supply side. If you take a moment to think about the supply curve, you will realize it tells us how much will be supplied at a given market price, or how much producers are willing to produce given how much they can sell each unit of output they produce. So, as a producer, you incur a cost when producing a good or service, and this cost is known as the production cost, or the cost of production. For firms providing a service, it's called the cost of service. When producers of goods and services sell their output, they will make a profit if the cost of production is less than the market price. And more importantly, the higher the market price is above the cost of production, the greater the profit will be. So firms will therefore always try to minimize their production costs so to maximize their profits. So when looking at the market supply curve, we can think of it as a marginal cost curve. Remember, producers of goods will keep increasing their output until the benefit from doing so is less than or equal to the cost of production. So the supply curve tells us the marginal cost of the last unit produced at every quantity supplied on the supply curve. In a moment, I will explain this concept graphically using a supply curve. But in short, the marginal cost value is the minimum supply price, which is exactly what the supply curve illustrates. It shows what producers need the market price to be in order to supply different amounts of output. So now let's look at an actual market supply curve to better investigate and understand the concept of producer surplus. In Figure A, we can see the market supply curve for beer. On the y-axis, we have dollars per liter to represent the different market price levels, and on the x-axis, we have liters of beer to represent the different quantities supplied. Let's assume that the current market price is $20 per liter. The supply curve tells us that at $20 per liter, the amount of beer that is supplied to the market is 150 liters. But what is more interesting is what we can see to the left of the 150 liter supply mark on the x-axis. By looking at the x-axis to the left of the 150 liter point, we can see that producers would still be able to supply beer at market prices below the current market price of $20 per liter. For example, if we look at point B for a moment, we can see that at a market price of $10 per liter, producers would still supply 50 liters of beer. This is because at a market price of $10 per liter, producers could produce 50 liters of beer and still make a profit. But they can't produce more than 50 liters because production costs would be too high and therefore they would not be able to make a profit at that price level. But the current market price of $20 per liter at point D is much higher than the $10 per liter at point B, which means producers can produce more than 50 liters and still make a profit. But this means that at a market price of $20 per liter, the first 50 liters of beer that is sold is in a way more profitable than, for example, the last 50 liters of beer. One way we can see this is by looking at the distance between the current market price level and point B. This distance, which is shown by the black arrow between point B and the market price level, represents the profit in a way of the 50th liter of beer being produced and sold. This is because the 50th liter of beer would have been supplied to the market even if the market price was only $10 per liter. So we can say in a way that the 50th liter of beer, which would have been supplied at the lower price of $10, that is being sold at twice the value of $20 per litre is providing producers a sort of benefit of $10. It is this $10 which we call producer surplus. And the reason why we do not call the $10 profit, but rather producer surplus or benefit, is because we do not actually know if it is real financial profit. The only way to calculate actual profit is by looking at total costs and total revenue for each individual firm. But what we do know is that the market as a whole, or at least all the producers of beer in the market, are benefiting from higher market price levels, especially for all the beer that they would have produced at lower market price levels. The black arrow between point B and the market price level thus represents the producer surplus at the 50th litre of beer supplied in the market. But we can see that there are many such points on the supply curve below the market price level of $20 per litre. If we wanted to calculate the total market producer surplus, we would have to draw a black arrow between the market price level and the supply curve at every point on the supply curve, which is not a very efficient way of calculating total market producer surplus. But by looking at just some of the arrows, we can see from the graph that the total market producer surplus is simply equal to the area underneath the market price level and above the supply curve. So to calculate the total market producer surplus, all we need to do is calculate the area of the triangle between point A, point D, and the $20 per litre price point on the y-axis. This is shown by the green triangle. To calculate the area of this triangle, all we have to do is multiply the base of the triangle by half the height of the triangle. The base of the triangle is equal to 150 litres of beer, which we can see by looking at the x-axis or simply by looking at point D on the supply curve itself. To calculate the height of the triangle, we simply take the $20 price level and subtract the price level where the supply curve intersects the y-axis. So the height of the triangle is equal to $20 minus $5, which is equal to $15 per litre. Therefore, in order to calculate the area of the triangle, we simply need to multiply 150 litres of beer by half the height of the triangle, which is $15 per litre. And half the height of $15 per litre is $7.5 per litre, which means the area of the triangle is $7.50 per litre multiplied by 150 litres, which gives us a total area of $1,125, which represents the total market producer surplus of beer producers in the market, when the market price is equal to $20 per litre. The concept of producer surplus is very similar to the concept of consumer surplus, but it is based on the supply curve, while consumer surplus is based on the demand curve. But what happens when the price level falls? Let's assume the market price level of beer falls to $15 per litre. The price of beer in the market might fall because of a change in season, where consumers prefer to drink beer in summer rather than winter. So producers of beer lower their prices in order to attract more consumers during colder months. By looking at the supply curve, we can see that producers will now only supply the market with 100 litres of beer. Because the market price is now lower than before, we should expect producers of beer to achieve lower levels of revenue, profit, and producer surplus on average. Although this might not be true for every single individual producer, it will be true for the entire market as a whole or average. We can assess the negative impact from this lower price on the market by comparing the new producer surplus to the previous producer surplus. To calculate the new producer surplus, we simply calculate the area underneath the new market price level of $15 per litre and above the supply curve. This area is represented by the triangle defined by point A, point C, and the $15 price point on the y-axis. To calculate the area of the triangle, we simply take half the height of the triangle and multiply this by the base of the triangle. By looking at point C, or the x-axis, we can see that the base of the triangle is 100 liters of beer. The height of the triangle is defined by the distance between the market price level and where the supply curve intersects the y-axis. So the height of the triangle is equal to $15 per liter minus $5 per liter, which gives us a height equal to $10 per liter. And half the height of the triangle is therefore $5 per liter. The area of the new triangle, or the new producer surplus, is therefore equal to 100 liters of beer multiplied by $5 per liter of beer. This gives us a new total market producer surplus of $500, which is lower than the previous producer surplus of $1,125. We can therefore see that a decrease in the price of beer from $20 per liter to $15 per liter more than halved the producer surplus. So far we have used very basic concepts and examples to illustrate producer surplus, but there is a lot more we can do with this concept. In the next video, we will combine the concept of producer surplus and consumer surplus so that we can investigate how changes in the market price level affect producers and consumers differently, and so that we can start investigating market inefficiencies and the size of those inefficiencies.